So go into your breathing meditation, let the mind settle down. And then take a moment and remind yourself of your bodhicitta motivation and place your mind very firmly in the attitude of compassion and wishing to be of great benefit to all living beings. So, for the teaching part, the afternoon sessions, we'll be going through Nagarjuna's letter to a friend. And this is a really lovely text that covers a lot of the basic elements of Dharma practice. So, Nagarjuna, as many of you may know, is one of the outstanding masters of our lineage. And in particular, he's noted for his texts on reasoning and on establishing the Madhyamaka view of emptiness, which is regarded as the highest or most accurate view of emptiness. And it's said that he lived between 150 and 250 AD. He was born in South India, and he lived 600 years. That's the Tibetan view. History is not the Tibetan strong point. Yeah, many strong points, but history is not one of them. Anyway, so some people say that there's probably 2 or maybe even 3 Nagarjunas, because one Nagarjuna wrote about Madhyamaka and the letter to a friend and so on. And another one talked about Tantra, but he seems to have been later. It's also said that Nagarjuna was the abbot of Nalanda, but Nalanda really prospered between the 5th century and the end of the 12th century. And Nagarjuna lived in the 2nd and early 3rd century. So, yeah. But whether he was the abbot of Nalanda or not, he was an unbelievable master who was able to explain the Buddha's teachings, especially the teachings on emptiness, in a way that nobody else could, And as a result, he's in the lineage of many Buddhist traditions throughout Asia, not just the Tibetans, but in China and Japan and so on. I believe in Vietnam too. Yeah. So just to hear a text by him is quite fortunate. The letter to a friend is not one of those texts where he's setting up the Madhyamaka philosophy. It's one that's much more general. Some of you know about the precious garland. I taught it here at the Abbey, and it's on the web. And Khenser Jampa Tektrok gave a wonderful commentary on it that is in the book, Practical Ethics and Profound Emptiness, which is in our little Dharma area downstairs in Chenrezig Hall. And that was also a teaching given to a king. And this one was a teaching given to a king as well. We don't know if it was the same king or not, and we're not really sure who the king was. But there's some ideas about what the king's name may be, if you're interested in that kind of thing. And excuse my pronunciation. Okay, but okay, he seems okay, because they say that there's two Tibetan names that exist in different versions of the text. Okay. So this text exists in Tibetan, and there's also 3 versions of it in the Chinese canon. It was translated 3 different times. They all have different numbers of verses. Okay. Yeah. So they seem to think his name was Surabhibhadra. Okay. It could have been Udayibhadra, Udayana, Gautami Putra, Kanishka, Satavahana, and so on. And the so on is the one I pronounced correctly. Okay, so they say all we can say was he's probably one of a number of Andhran kings ruling in central India at the time Nagarjuna lived there. Okay, so this was the time when Buddhism was really going strong in India. There were different schools of thought. There were many Sangha communities. It was really thriving. Yeah. And some say that he was an advisor to the king of the Satavahana dynasty. Okay, that ruled between 167 and 196, but we don't really know. Okay, and the Sanskrit of this text is no longer extant, so it's only in Tibetan and the three Chinese translations. Okay, but it's really beautiful, and if it's the same king, my guess is he would have taught this text first and then Precious Garland. Because Precious Garland in the first chapter, he starts off he talks about karma, and then he goes right into emptiness. And so he wouldn't do that with a king that was a baby beginner to the Dharma. This text is much more setting out the foundation practices. But it's interesting when Nagarjuna starts it off, you'll see he praises the king and says how knowledgeable the king is and so on. I guess that's what you have to do to get an important person to listen to you. Yeah? Okay. So, well, we'll start here. So it starts off, the text starts off actually with the title is Sri Lanka, which means is sometimes translated as letter to a friend or as friendly letter. Okay. The king, was the king a friend? The king was probably a disciple, maybe a benefactor. Yeah, I don't think they hung out and, watched the World Cup together. Yeah, not that kinds of friends, more like a spiritual friend, which is actually the best kind of friend to have. Okay, so then there's the translator's homage is homage to the gentle and glorious youth, Manjughosha. So it's a prostration to Manjushri. So in Tibet, they set up, because they had so many different texts coming in, that they set up a way of determining which of the three baskets, whether it's the Vinaya, the Sutra, or the Abhidharma basket, the Vinaya corresponding to the higher training and ethical conduct, the Sutra basket to the higher training and concentration, and the Abhidharma basket to the higher training and wisdom, the three higher trainings that the Buddha taught. So according to who the translator paid homage to, you could know which of those three categories. So this one is homage to the gentle and glorious youth, Manjughosha. So it indicates that it's the Abhidharma category, the perfection of, or not the perfection, but the higher training and wisdom. If it were Vinaya, it would say I pay homage to the omniscient ones. So the Sangha knows when we do our fortnightly recitation of the Vinaya, at one point we hold the corner of our robes up and we say homage to the omniscient one, because that text is from the Vinaya basket. And then the other baskets, like the sutra that we recited today after lunch, we paid homage to the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. So that was from the sutra basket, because that's who you pay homage to if the text is from the sutra basket and is primarily the higher training of concentration. Okay, so then there's a prologue, which is actually an exhortation to listen, encouraging us to listen. So Nagarjuna says, "Listen now to these few lines of noble song that I've composed for those with many virtues fit for good, to help them yearn for merit springing from the sacred words of he who has gone to bliss." Okay, so he's talking to somebody who has accumulated a great deal of merit and who is fit for virtue. In the verse it says, "For those with many virtues." Okay, so it's somebody who has accumulated a lot of merit. And the subject, is the excellent words, or the sacred words of he who has gone to bliss. So he who has gone to bliss is, the Sanskrit name is Sugata. Yeah, you'll see it in various situations and texts. Sugata, gone to bliss, means that someone has gone to the bliss of non-abiding nirvana. In other words, that person has attained full Buddhahood. They don't dwell in either samsara or in the personal peace of an arhat. It's somebody who has abandoned everything to be abandoned, and practiced and accomplished everything to practice and accomplish. Okay, so this is the words of somebody who, he's saying that he's giving the teachings of the Buddha. In other words, he's saying they're not my teachings. I've just composed the verse to relate to you the teachings of the Buddha. And you're somebody with many virtues who is fit for good. So he's kind of saying, he's praising the king and saying, you've accumulated a lot of merit, and therefore you have this fortune to hear this text. And so please listen well, okay? And then the next verse is, it's also part of the prologue, and it's a lesson in humility and why one should listen. So it says, the first verse is humility with regards to the words. So the verse reads, "The wise will always honor and bow down to Buddha statues, though they're made of wood. So too, although these lines of mine be poor, do not feel scorn. They teach the holy way." Okay, so all the teachings that the Buddha gave, they were for the purpose of attaining either a higher rebirth or the highest good meaning liberation and full awakening. And so he's saying, although these lines of mine be poor, in other words, Nagarjuna is being very humble, and he's saying, I'm not a poet, I don't know how to write well, so I'm just trying to convey that. So even though my language isn't so great, don't feel scorn, don't ignore what's being taught, because these are the words that are explaining the Buddha's teachings and the way to full awakening. Okay, so he's saying don't rely so much on the words, but look at the meaning. What do the words mean? What are they pointing to? So this is very, very good advice, because sometimes if someone's not so well spoken or they don't write so well, we go, this person doesn't know how to write, and it's not worth paying any attention to. They must be, very stupid. Meaning we're quite proud. But so Nagarjuna is saying if you have problems with the way things are expressed, just overlook that and try and understand the meaning, because the meaning is really worthwhile. Yeah. So in English, we say don't judge a book by its cover, even though we do. Yeah, I mean, my editor, my publishers are always, we have so many discussions over covers, you can't believe it. Yeah, even though we're not supposed to judge books over covers. So in the same way, don't judge the content on the way it's expressed. So the analogy he's given is, Buddha's statues are made of wood or bronze or whatever, but when we see them, the statues remind us of the qualities of the Buddha, and so we pay respect to to the Buddha as embodied by the statue. So this is not idol worship, okay? If in case you're concerned, we're not bowing to the wood of the statue and worshiping an idol, but the statues, the pictures, all these things remind us of a Buddha's qualities. So just as we talked about this morning, how compassion is expressed in a physical form, in the form of Avalokiteshvara, Chenrezig, okay? And so that inspires us to think of these qualities. So even though, a statue may be made of wood, it may be old, it may be chipped, it doesn't matter. It reminds us of the Buddha and the Buddha's qualities, so we should, and we pay respect to that statue as the expression of the Buddha's qualities. So too, this text, even though I didn't write it very well, listen, because what it has to say is important. Okay, so that was humility with regard to the words. The next verse is humility with regard to the meaning. So he says, while you have surely learned and understood the mighty Buddha's many lovely words, is it not so that something made of chalk by moonlight lit shines gleaming whiter still? Okay, so here he's saying to the king, you may have heard the Buddha's teachings before and taken in their beautiful, excellent, and pleasant words, listened to them. You may have reflected on them. You may know something about the Dharma already, but listen anyway, okay? Because every time you hear teachings, they go in a different way in your mind, okay? And so he gives this example of a house that has been whitewashed with chalk. I guess they would put chalk all over houses in ancient India. And so although that chalk is naturally white and the house you can see is white, when the moonlight is very bright and shines on it, then it looks really, really bright and it looks very white. Okay, so the analogy here is, King, you may know something about the Dharma, but by listening again, it builds on what you already know. It makes your understanding brighter. It's like the moonlight shining on the White House makes it appears brighter. And I think this is really excellent advice, because some people think, oh, well, I've heard that teachings before. I don't need to hear it again. Yeah. But yet, when you watch, when His Holiness the Dalai Lama teaches, all the Geshes and Rinpoches and Lamas come to hear him teach, even though they're texts that they themselves teach to their students. But when His Holiness or Kyabje Ling Rinpoche or somebody is coming to teach, everybody comes and you listen to it again and again and again. And if you've done this in your practice, you'll know that every time you hear something, it goes in a very different way. Yeah, and that is because we purify, we accumulate merit in between hearing it one time and hearing it the next time. And so it sounds completely different to us. So if you don't understand something at the beginning, don't worry about it, okay? As you purify, accumulate merit, hear more teachings, they'll sink in, and what you hear will sound very different to you than what you heard the first time. And I know for myself, when I first met the Dharma, I'd known the Dharma about 1 year, and I went to do Vajrasattva retreat, and I was saying to people, what's the stuff about purification? Because the retreat's all about purification. How do you know you've purified? What does it mean to purify? What is this, How do you wash the mind? Because there's no Ajax for the mind, And how do you know that you've cleansed your mind? So I had teachings, the year before, and then I did the Vajrasattva over the summer, and then I went back for teachings again in the autumn. And my teacher's basically teaching, again, the stages of the path, the Lamrim material. Yeah, same teacher, same text, same topics. And I'm going, oh my goodness, this sounds really different. Yeah, is this what he said last year? Really? It sounds totally different. And then I realized, oh, that's how you know that some purification has happened. Because when you listen, it's like something clicks in a different way. Something makes sense that didn't make sense before. You see a link between this point and that point that you didn't see before, or something really moves in your heart that hadn't happened before. Okay? So he's saying to the king, you may have heard all this before, but listen anyway, because it might mean something different to you. So I think when the Zen people say Zen mind, beginner's mind, what they're referring to is to be able to listen with this kind of freshness, like you're hearing it for the first time and letting the impact of the text really hit you, instead of coming and saying, oh, well, I know that topic and I've talked about it myself and I know all about it. So, okay, I'll sit here and, while they go through it. Because you see the very different attitudes. So those different attitudes are going to influence how the text sounds to us and what we take from listening to it. And so that's why we always generate our motivation at the beginning of a teaching to help us remember to be humble and open-minded and learn what we can. Then the next verse. So this is actually the first verse of the main text. Yeah, the main part of the text. So this is verse 4 on our handout. So this section is talking about faith as a support on the path to upper rebirth and the highest goodness of liberation and awakening. Okay, so it starts out with 6 things that you should keep in mind. So these are often called the 6 recollections, or the 6 things to be mindful of. They're found in the Lamrim. Actually, most of this text is found in the Lamrim, if you study the Lamrim. Okay, so the verse reads, 6 things there are the Buddhas have explained, and all their virtues you must keep in mind. The Buddha, the Dharma, Sangha, okay, those are the first 3. Bounteous acts, which means generosity, and moral laws, which means ethical conduct, ethical discipline, and gods, which refers to the celestial beings in the desire realm and also the upper realms. So all those, each one recall. Okay, so what we want to do is, of course, the Buddha, Dharma, Sangha. Keep those in mind. They are our refuge objects. They are not only our guides on the spiritual path, but they are what we want to become ourselves. Yeah, we want to actualize the Dharma in our own mind, because that's the real protection. The Dharma refers to the Buddha's teachings, but here, when we talk about it as an object of refuge, it refers to the true cessations and true paths, the last 2 of the four Noble Truths. Yeah, which when we actualize these in our own mind stream, then our mind is free. Yeah, so we want to remember that Dharma and attain that Dharma. As we develop the understanding of emptiness, when we can realize emptiness, the ultimate nature of reality, directly, non-conceptually, then we become the Sangha jewel. And when we have eliminated all defilements from our mind, then we become the Buddha jewel. Those are the 3 jewels. Okay, so we want to keep those in mind, like I said, because they're our guides and they're also what we want to become. So here we see something that really differentiates Buddhism from theistic religions. Yeah, in theistic religions, there's many different ways in which they're different, but one is, in theistic religions, you never become God or Allah or, whatever the name is. You never become that supreme being, okay? In Buddhism, we become a Buddha, okay? So there's no unbridgeable gap between us and the Buddha. Whereas in theistic religions, there's this gap that you can never cross between God and us, as however they describe us, okay? So it's one way that Buddhism is quite different in that it says, we have the potential to become exactly like a fully awakened one. We can become a fully awakened one ourselves. Okay? So we are not inherently flawed. Yeah? There's no original sin that we are burdened with from the very beginning that we cannot get rid of. Okay? But we have the Buddha nature, the Buddha potential. So that's quite important, to remember. So to keep the Buddha Sangha in mind, and then generosity, because generosity is one of the things that is valued by all religions and even by people who aren't religious. Everybody sees generosity as a virtue. Don't you think? Yeah? At least theoretically. Everybody may not act generously, but everybody holds it as a good quality to try and generate within ourselves. And it's also the easiest virtue to accomplish because we grow up giving things and receiving things. Okay? So it's not like you have to be of vast learning and great meditative ability to be generous. Okay? Anybody can be generous. Yeah? It's not terribly difficult, although we have our hurdles, of course, to overcome to generosity. But, it's something that can be done and that everybody does. I mean, our society functions on the basis of people being generous to each other. Okay, then so that's number 4. The 5th one to remember is ethical conduct. So ethical conduct means abandoning the wish to do harm to anyone. So not harming ourselves and not harming others. Yeah. And we'll get into in a few verses here what exactly it is to abandon. But, again, after generosity, ethical conduct is one basic thing that all societies operate depending on. Every religion, every society, whether you have it's secular people or not, everybody has an ethical code. Yeah, they have values. We often think, the people in prison have no values. They have a lot of values, and there's things you do and you don't do. Some of them are maybe skewed, but some of them are really right on. Okay? So this keeping of learning some self-restraint so that we don't harm others. Okay, that's the 5th one. Then the 6th one is the gods or the celestial beings, and that's referring to in the desire realm, the different levels of celestial beings that have a more sense pleasure deluxe than we have, and also the gods in people who are born in even higher celestial realms called the form and formless realms, and they're born there because of deep states of meditative absorption that they've attained. Okay, so the people who have been born there have created great virtue, and so that's why there's something to remember, for us to remember also. Okay, because this section is about talking about attaining upper rebirth. Okay, so that's the brief account of those 6 things, and now we're going to get into a more detailed account, and here it starts with the recollection of the celestial beings, even though this verse sounds a lot like recollection of ethical conduct. Yeah, but actually it's, when you make an outline here, it's of the celestial beings. And it's because ethical conduct leads to an upper rebirth. Okay, so here the verse says, with body, speech, and mind, always rely on wholesome deeds, the tenfold virtuous path. avoiding liquor at all costs, thus find true joy to lead a life of virtuous deeds. Okay, so it's telling us physically, verbally, and mentally, so the meaning of body, speech, and mind. And this comes up a lot, because these are our three main modes of activity. Yeah, it all originates with the mind. We have an intention or a plan in the mind. And then through that, then we communicate. We do verbal actions, which it says speech, but it means any kind of communication. So it can include nodding your head, writing an email, even though there are things that are done physically. And then that's speech, and then body or physical actions. So it's saying rely on the tenfold virtuous path. So there are 10 virtues, paths of virtue, that if we practice them properly, with a good preparation, a good action, a good conclusion of the action, then these will create the cause for us to have a good rebirth in future lives. Now, you may say, what's all this talk about good rebirth? I thought we're supposed to live in the present. Why are we always told to think about our rebirth? I don't even know if rebirth exists. Yeah? Anybody think like that? Good. Okay. So I think most of us, who grew up in the West, we grew up thinking like that. Okay. So let me just give a very short way that maybe would help you understand rebirth. And that is that everything that functions has a cause. Yeah, things don't happen out of nowhere. And this is a basic premise all across Buddhism, cause and effect. And it's something that we understand in our regular lives too. We do certain things because we want certain effects. When we have certain effects, we often trace back and what was the cause that brought this, okay? So if we look right now when we're alive, we say we have a body and mind. On the basis of our body and mind having a relationship, then we say there's a living person, a sentient being, okay? But the body and the mind are two different things with two different natures. The body is something physical, okay? It's made of atoms and molecules. You can measure it with scientific instruments. Scientific instruments were designed to know things that are matter, okay? The mind, the definition of mind is that which is clear and cognizant. So one meaning of clear or clarity is that it doesn't have form. It's not atomic in nature. Another meaning of clear is that it's clear like a mirror. It can reflect objects. And it's cognizant. It can know or engage with objects. So here right away we see body, atoms and molecules. Mind, consciousness, not atoms and molecules. And we have to really see that there's so many things in life that are not atomically based. Okay? We can talk about love. Do you think love is just the chemical, electrical stuff going on in your brain? Yeah. Do you think peace of mind is just certain neural, flashes at your synapses? Yeah. If you put a few brain cells in a petri dish and you look at their synapses with the chemical stuff and the electrical stuff, are you looking at peace of mind, at love, at anger? No. Yeah. When you say to somebody, oh, I really care about you, are you saying that to their brain? Yeah. Oh, your brain is just so fantastic. So beautiful. Those gray folds. Yeah. That stink of formaldehyde. Or stink because they're decaying. But I love your brain. Yeah. I mean, come on. Okay. So, yeah, the brain is a physical organ. The mind is, our emotions, our perceptions, our experiences of pleasure, pain, and neutral, the whole part of us that can cognize objects. It's what makes the difference between a corpse and a living being. Okay? So, the brain has its causes, which are atomic in nature. Yeah. And, we trace our body back, our whole body back, This body depends on the body of 5 years ago, 10 years ago, the body we had when we came out of our mama's womb, the body we had when we were a zygote, the body we had when the sperm and egg and consciousness first came together. All of those are material in nature. Okay. The mind, though, today's mind depends on yesterday's mind, the mind of the day before, the mind of the day before that. We may not remember things from when we were an infant, but we know infants have consciousness. They experience pain and pleasure. Yeah. Then back into the womb, there's also some kind of mind. It's not a fully developed consciousness with linguistic ability and so on, like our present mind, but there's experience at that time. And if you trace that right back to the time when that consciousness joined the sperm and the egg, okay, the sperm and the egg, material in nature, they come from our parents. Where did that consciousness come from that joined the sperm and the egg? Yeah? What was its cause? Did you get half your mind from your dad and half your mind from your mom? Yeah? Did the stork bring it? Okay. Is it some, emergent property of your body such that somehow it just sprang up seemingly out of nowhere? It needs a cause. So as we traced our mind back from this mind back to the moment of conception, it was one moment of clarity and awareness preceded by another moment of clarity and awareness. You get to that moment of conception, it had to have a cause. Previous moment of clarity and awareness. So that brings us into previous lives. Okay? And it can be traced backward. Same thing. When we go forward, the mind, the body goes forward. It's physical in nature. Yeah, we die. There's a corpse. Then the corpse gets burnt and pollutes the air, or it gets buried and the worms have a good lunch. But it changes into something different. At the time of death, too, the mind has a continuum. One moment of clarity and awareness following another moment of clarity and awareness. And so we usually enter into an intermediate stage, and then when the karma ripens fully, then we take rebirth in another body. Okay? So that's how the system of rebirth works. The Buddha did not invent rebirth. Okay? In fact, the Buddha did not create anything. He didn't create the path to liberation. He didn't create cyclic existence or samsara. All the Buddha did was describe how things operate. So he described our present situation. He described what caused it. He describes what our potential can be, and he describes how to actualize that. Okay? So the Buddha didn't create anything. And you don't need to propitiate the Buddha and be a goody two-shoes to the Buddha to receive aid from the Buddha. Okay? Because the Buddha has compassion for all of us. Yeah, we don't need to do a tap dance and please the Buddha and so on. Of course, if we do, that actually functions to open our mind so that we're receptive to the Buddha's teachings. Okay? But from the side of the Buddha, yeah, the Buddha doesn't need, apples and pears and bananas and water and what else? Yeah, some fake jewels. Yeah, they're pretty. They shine. They look like real ones, but they're fake. Okay. Yeah, we make really nice offerings, don't we? Here's some fake this. Here's some fake flowers, Buddha. We give fake flowers. We give fake jewels. Yeah. Yeah. Next thing we'll be putting on. Well, maybe those are plastic fruit. Yeah. So, but from the Buddha doesn't need this kind of stuff. When you're enlightened, you are far beyond that. Yeah. And the Buddha doesn't need our praises. Okay. We do these kinds of things in order to open our own mind and make our own mind receptive. Yeah. Because if we have a cynical mind, yeah, a closed mind, a sarcastic mind, then we're closing ourselves off from benefiting from what the Buddha has to teach us. Okay? So we do these kinds of things to open our mind and make ourselves more receptive. Okay? So, yeah. So the tenfold virtuous path. So the tenfold virtuous path involves abandoning the tenfold non-virtuous path. That's one meaning of it. And another meaning is actively doing the opposite of those non-virtuous ones. Okay, so the things that we want to abandon because they create problems in our life and problems for other sentient beings. 3 of them we do physically. First is taking life, and included in that is harming others physically. Yeah. Second one is taking others' belongings, taking what hasn't been given to us. So it doesn't mean you necessarily break into somebody's house at night. You take the things that belong to the company you work for and use them for your private self. Yeah. People do that all the time, huh? Yeah. You sneak into the movies without paying the fee. You round off your tax figures to the lower number, that is about half the actual number, all these ways we have of, taking what isn't ours. We borrow things and don't return them. Yeah. Yeah, we say, I don't do that. But I remember once we went into one of our friends' homes in Coeur d'Alene, and there was a book with a Sravasti Abbey sticker on it. In their library. Or on the table or something. And, they wouldn't say, we steal, but we don't remember giving them that book. That's why we put the sticker on it. Okay, so this happens, okay? Then the third one, physically, is unwise and unkind sexual behavior. So that's chiefly adultery, but it doesn't mean you have to be married. You're just in a relationship. You go with somebody who's outside your own relationship, or even you're single, you go with somebody who's in a relationship. And nowadays, I think it could include unprotected sex when there's danger of sexually transmitted diseases. And I think also up in this hookup period, it could include just using people for our own pleasure without really taking into account their feelings. Yeah, because the hookup generation, oh yeah, we're just having a good time, there's no commitment, until one of the parties is getting attached to the other one. And then the other one says, hey, I thought we were doing this just to enjoy and there's no commitment. And the other one says, well, I like you. I don't want to be in a relationship with you. Get out of here. And then, it hurts somebody's feelings. Okay, so to be considerate of other people. So those are the three non-virtues to abandon physically. And the whole Me Too movement, sexual harassment, that also falls in the third one. Now we can talk about it openly. Yeah. So that all goes into the third. Then there's 4 verbally. So the first one is lying, deceiving, say what is, isn't, or was it, isn't, is. Okay, doing this intentionally for our own personal gain. Second one is speaking divisively, speaking in a way that creates disharmony, telling one person what another person said about them. But you kind of flavor it up a little bit. I was just talking with so-and-so. They told me that you blah, 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 blah. Did you really do blah, blah, blah? They think you're blah, 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 blah. And then this person over here goes, oh, I didn't. I thought that person was my friend, and you tell me that they're talking bad about me behind my back. Ooh. And then we create disharmony between people. Okay? It happens in offices. You gain little cliques in your office, in your family. How people in the family get cliquish and talk badly about other family members. I mean, that's what you do when you get together with relatives, isn't it? Yeah, tomorrow's 4th of July. Yeah. So what are people going to do? They're going to talk about all their relatives and criticize, the different relatives. Yeah. Or so that's number 5. Or they do number 7, which is idle talk. Yeah. Or you do number 6, which is harsh talk. Okay. So actually tomorrow is the day for the 4 non-virtues of speech. Okay? Because you're with your family, they ask you questions, you don't want to say, so what do? You lie. Okay? Then you're talking with your other relatives about this one and that one and the other one, and somebody, did something you didn't like, and that one did something you didn't, and this one and that one, and you create disharmony. Yeah. Or you're there at your 4th of July barbecue, and one of your relatives kind of is rude to you, or they burn the hot dogs, and you, or they do something with your kids. They let your kids hold a sparkler, and a sprinkler, a sparkler, and you get furious, and then that's harsh words. Okay. So that's the 6th non-virtue. And then you talk about all the other relatives. this one's getting married to this one, and this one got divorced by this one, and this one had this baby, and they named it this, but why did they name it that? They should have named it this. And, this one moved to New York, and that one moved away from New York, and, look, this one just got a new car. They must be doing really well. Oh, but I don't know that they're doing so well. Maybe they took it out on a bank loan. Who would loan them money? I don't know. So that's the seventh one. Okay, which is idle talk. Yeah, so this is 4th of July, right? Okay, it repeats itself on Thanksgiving, yeah, on Christmas, on Memorial Day, on Labor Day, okay, and that's why you all came here for 4th of July. Okay, so those are the first 7 that we do physically and verbally. The last 3 we do mentally. Don't even have to say or do anything. The first of the mental ones is coveting. Yeah. Oh, look. Gee, I like the color of her chugu. My chugu is really faded. Her chugu is such a nice color. I wonder, Venerable Jampa's my friend. I wonder how I can get her to change chugus with me. Yeah? Okay? Or maybe she can even keep her own chugu. That's fine. Maybe she'll get me a new one. That's even better than her old one. Yeah. So planning, coveting other people's things. Okay? Poor Venerable Jigme, I'm always coveting her shoes. She's given me so many pairs of shoes. Yeah. Yeah. Now she avoids me. Yeah. Venerable Jigme, I need some slippers. My feet are cold. Well, you can wear mine for today. Oh, thank you. And today just lasts a very long time until she buys another pair and then just kind of gives me her pair, So, okay, so coveting. Then malice. Okay, again, we do it. We don't even have to say or doing anything. You sit there and you plot how you're going to get your revenge against somebody who hurt your feelings or somebody who cheated you. Okay? Yeah. So you do this one in perfect meditation position. Yeah? Perfect. You can do coveting in perfect meditation position too, and just plan how to get something. But the malice one, I don't know. Maybe that's because I do that one in meditation position. Perfect, You plot every little detail of exactly how you're going to say a seemingly insignificant comment that is really going to get to the other person. Okay? But it's so seemingly insignificant that when they're upset, you look and you say, well, what are you upset about? I didn't mean to hurt you. You're just very sensitive. Okay. So then you have lying on top of your malice, on top of your harsh speech. Okay, but the planning is the malice. And then the third one we do mentally is wrong views. Yeah. Oh, all this talk about ethical conduct and karma and our actions influencing what we experience. I don't know. That sounds like a bunch of hooey that they teach you in order to convince you to be good. Yeah. I think as long as I don't get caught, I can do anything I want. It's not going to have any effect. Yeah? So that kind of wrong view. We don't believe that there's an ethical dimension to our actions. Or, we go even further and, I think animal worship is not animal worship, animal sacrifice. Yeah, this is the way to please the gods. In ancient India, they talk about, one wrong view. This is a wrong view of ethical, of what the path to liberation is. But apparently somebody did it at the time of the Buddha, that if you jump on a trident and the middle spoke comes out the top of your head, then you attain liberation. Thank goodness that one's a wrong view. Okay. Yeah. But people have all sorts of strange ideas, don't they? Yeah, incredibly strange ideas. So, So those are the 10 that we want to abandon. The mere abandoning of them constitutes the 10 virtues, and then doing the opposite of them also are 10 virtuous actions. So instead of killing, saving life; instead of stealing, protecting others' property. Okay, and so you go through all of them like that, and just doing the opposite. Yeah. So it's very helpful to contemplate those, take a kind of inventory. What have we done that we need to purify? And then how can we reverse those? How can we, when we're, when we have the opportunity to lie and get something we want, how can we refrain from doing that? How can we train ourselves to tell the truth? How can we come to value truth-telling, especially in this day and age where it's so hard to know what the truth is anymore? Where there's alternate facts. That's a great expression, isn't it? Alternate facts. No wonder she got a good job. Yeah. So, to really value telling the truth, to value creating harmony with our words. Yeah, to help people who are not on good terms become on good terms. Yeah, to encourage people who don't feel good about themselves by pointing out their good qualities. Ways in which we can use our speech to really create goodness in the world. Yeah. So I think this is a good meditation for you to do in the Lamrim section, who's ever leading it next. Okay. Then, avoid liquor at all costs. So here, liquor also means recreational drugs and abuse of legal prescriptive drugs. Yeah. And more people in this country die from abuse of prescription drugs than from recreational drugs. Yeah. And I'm sure people have all heard about the opioid epidemic that's going on and the rebirth of meth. Meth is now in. The guys in prison tell me there's whole new things that are coming into prison. You can get lots of drugs in prison. Yeah, the guards bring them in. So abandoning, intoxicating things. And this is one of the things, because we have this thing of the 5 lay precepts that people, who are not ordained can take. So to abandon killing, stealing, unwise and unkind sexual behavior, lying, sounds okay. 5th one, taking intoxicants. I can't do that 5th one. Well, why? You want to go out and get drunk? Well, all my relatives drink, and when I go over for dinner at their house, if I don't drink just a little bit, they're going to think I'm weird, and it won't give them a very good image of Buddhism. They'll think Buddhism is really prudish if I don't drink. And my friends, too. I always go out to the bar with my friends. I mean, where else am I going to meet people to date? Where else am I going to see my friends, you know? We don't go to Buddhist centers. You all keep silence there. Yeah, I want to be with my friends and have a good time. So what do? We drink, we drug. There's no harm, no problem. Yeah. Prescriptive drugs, well, the doctor prescribed it. It's okay. I'm just taking what the doctor prescribed. He said take as needed. Yeah, so I need. What's wrong with that? It makes me relax. Yeah? Okay, so, and then the other one is, well, what's wrong with it anyway? You know, are you some kind of, you don't believe in having fun? No drinking, no drugging. You guys are such prudes. Well, the reason that one is one of the precepts is usually because when you get intoxicated, then you do all the other non-virtues. Yeah. So I'm kind of assuming most people here have been intoxicated at one point or another in their life, you know? And what do you speak? What do you say to other people when you're intoxicated, whether it's alcohol or prescription drugs or recreation drugs? How do you talk to other people? Yeah. What do you do? I won't tell you what I did. But, then we make all sorts of mistakes and do all sorts of foolish things. Okay. But we really can't stop because other people, they'll get a bad image of Buddhism if we don't drink and drug with them. Yeah. And we don't want to ruin Buddhism's influence. Yeah. And you go to a party and everybody's drinking. Yeah. I really don't want to drink. See, you have to understand, I really don't want to. But I'm doing it because everybody else is. And I hear so many people tell me that I think at parties probably nobody wants to drink and everybody's doing it because they think everybody else expects them to. Yeah. People never say to me, well, I'm not going to drink because there might be somebody else there who's an alcoholic who needs an example of somebody else who is restraining. I don't hear anybody say that to me. Yeah. So I always tease them when, there's time comes to take the 5 precepts and they take 4, and I say, then you can go out and celebrate that the other people took 5. Yeah. Okay, so avoiding liquor at all costs. And I may also add here, with the prison work I do, I would say 99.9% of the people I work with were intoxicated at the time they did the thing that wound them up in prison. Okay. So avoiding liquor at all costs, thus find true joy to lead a life of virtuous deeds. So when our mind is set on accumulating virtue, when we really have an attitude of non-harmfulness, it brings so much peace and joy in our lives. Our relationships with other people are so much better because we're not taking advantage of them. We're not lying to them. We're not taking their stuff. Okay? Yeah. Just try. Sometimes when you don't have a good relationship or something's going on, just try keeping good ethical conduct and being polite. Yeah? Being polite goes miles. Yeah, please and thank you can work wonders. especially when you usually say to somebody, do this and don't do that, and why in the hell did you do this? You know, just try being polite to people. It really turns things around. Okay? And then, of course, we all know when our relationships are better, then inside we feel better. When we act according to our values, we feel good about ourselves. We don't feel guilty. We don't have remorse. Yeah? We don't have to spend so much time rationalizing, justifying, explaining things to ourselves to try and tell ourselves what we did was okay when we don't really feel good about it. Okay? So if we keep good ethical conduct, it just prevents all of that. And we've all made mistakes, so if we do purification practice, then that remedies our mistakes so that we don't have to walk around with a backpack of misdeeds. You know, that just makes us feel heavier and heavier psychologically. We can purify all that. Okay. So we did 5 verses. Very good. We're roaring ahead.